lawsuits, and there's been two of them in focus, because I thought that it was crazy that in this city, 2010, February 2010, that kids didn't have teachers. I think every kid has a right to an incredible teacher, but this was just a teacher. And it was crazy to me too that we got to sue a district or sue a state that actually it was really, for me, representing the unfinished business of the civil rights movement that had come short of its historic goals, and this was the trajectory we fought for immigration. We saw in the Williams case with textbooks, and now we're trying to teach. So that experience really motivated me to study the law school and civil rights fellowship and think about when I first moved forward to ensure that kids had the same opportunities that I had. And that was great teachers and schools and student development. So it really, similar to running to kind of change the Tylenol policy, it was running, understanding that we live in a very complex web of regulations and laws that affect our schools. But if this was a student was going to get a seat just because she was in school and couldn't work out the teacher, then something had to change. So.
Perfect.
Got it.
So, coincidentally, I was cleaning the closet yesterday, and so I ran into a couple of artifacts that I thought I'd share. So many of you know that I was the first in my family to go to college. I wasn't the first to go to college, I was the first to graduate from college. And I went to Loyola Marymount University, and that experience changed my life. It was just an amazing place. I often joke that I'd never been to the campus, even though I grew up in Los Angeles, but and when I got there, I saw the beautiful campus, and then I saw all the students, and I thought to myself, white people are campus too. Like, I've never seen that many people. We're not Latino, right? And of course, I was one of very few Latinos at the university, but the experience changed my life. It was exactly what I needed, exactly what I needed. And so, it was there that I realized the inequity around education. I realized that I was lucky. I wasn't lucky to be there. That my parents had sacrificed a lot to get me there, and that the kids from across the street, some of them had dropped out of high school, and the difference between me and them was nothing other than the street, right? And that they too should have the opportunity to go to college. The experience that I had at LMU should be the one that everybody has a right to. And for middle-class families, college isn't, it's a right of passage even, right? This is where you're going, but for kids like myself in my neighborhood, it's, God, you're lucky that you got out and you were able to do this. Years later, so I that started the calling to education for me. Kind of change something so that more kids look like me would end up in places like LMU. And so maybe I started some schools in my neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing that I'm most proud of, and it ties right back to myself and my story, is that at the organization that I helped co-found, Partnership for Public Communities, they have what's called an Alumni Teach Project. And what that is that kids are encouraged that once they graduate college to come back into their communities and be part of a teacher residency program, and then eventually teach in the schools where they themselves were once students. And I was privileged this past spring to see Dr. King get her honorary degree at Loyola, and to see Dr. Rahman get her degree at Loyola. But I also had students who came to me from PUC that were there getting their teaching credential, Master's of Arts in Teaching. And so I brought with me the commencement program for my graduation and the one from last year. So my name is there, and then the kids' names are here, Dr. King's name is here. But the truth that now there's a group of students in my neighborhood who are graduating from the same place where I graduated from and are becoming teachers to come back into our communities. How many minutes we see?
3 and 13.
You're waiting?
all worried about it. They were worried we were gone.
So I'll go next. So I brought a book that I wanted to share, and I often get my inspiration and ideas and thoughts through reading different types of books. And so this one by Alexandra Slaughter is titled "Things I Want My Daughters to Know." And it's a book of essays that have stories about life situations. And in this one of the pieces reads, "My mother gave me milk. I tried to give my daughters milk and honey. Milk is our basic need. Honey is the fun, the happiness, and the joy." And for me, I felt relationships have played such an important part of who I am and my leadership style. And as a teacher, I found such value in building relationships with kids, but also by providing kids the space to have these types of other experiences. In addition to academic, the non-academic pieces, the pieces I felt were left out in many circumstances that they might have found themselves in when they came to school. So the milk is what you have to have, but what about the other color items and color? What about those pieces that were missing? And so I found that I would open my classroom just at like nutrition or lunch, and it would just be full. Kids would love to come in. You wouldn't think, they'd want to get out, go outside, be with friends. They'd want to come in and have conversations and talk. And I started to see the value of setting up those opportunities and providing experiences for kids. And so then started to offer things like little clubs for them so that they could have some leadership roles, and I saw them grow that way. Setting up field trips for them so then they could go out and explore things that they met. The kids had never seen the beach, for example. They never had those types of experiences. Or let's go to a play. They'd never seen those types of things. And so for me, as I continue to move, the power of relationships and the power of mentoring and the power of working together has been a foundational piece for me as a leader. And I have seen its power with kids, but also with adults. So as I transition to work more in the adult realm with, teachers, as a teacher of teachers, an administrator, I saw that adults need the same kind of love and joy and happiness and other pieces that kids needed, maybe even more so, actually. And then transfer that into my style of leadership and how I work with adults as well. And so the little lessons that I would learn about the importance of, looking at the small important things that sometimes we just bypass because we're so busy trying to get to what we think has to be done cannot be overlooked and can add great value. And I feel that it has really helped me in terms of my growth as a leader and appreciation of who others are and bringing them to have that same type of appreciation for others that they work with. So.
All right. So this is a picture of a first grade class on the North Long Beach Compton border at Coleman Public School. This is teacher Tammy Karsten's 31 unduplicated pupils. So I've been volunteering in this class for a long, long time. The backstory is the teacher was a junior secretary, 20-something-year-old junior secretary in the superintendent's office. It was that period in the 90s where we were encouraging everybody to become a teacher for the massive class size reduction in the primary grades. I was out giving a talk. She was along for the talk. We got back to the board building and she said, "Do you think I could be a teacher?" And I said, "Sure, of course." So she enrolled in Cal State Dominguez Hills, became a teacher, and among other things, she said, "Now that I'm a teacher, will you volunteer in my class?" And so I've been doing that, And this is the little book that memorializes our journey this past year in her classroom. The highlight of the year, we were at recess one morning, and little Jonathan comes up to me and he says, "Dr. Cohn, how old are you?" I said, 71, and he said, "And you're still alive." Apparently. But this really is my passion, and it goes to my own personal story. I went off to first grade, kindergarten, cold turkey, back in the 1950s, and a woman named Sister Martin taught me to read in the first grade. I came from a dysfunctional family. My mom was raising 6 of us by herself. She was a victim of domestic violence. And my dad was incarcerated when I went off to school. And that single act of teaching me to read in the first grade opened the doors of success for me. And it made all the difference in my life. And that is what I work toward. No matter the circumstances, if we can intervene and if we can do basic, important things like teaching kids to read, opportunities are absolutely endless. So that's my artifact.
Yeah, I brought one. I've kept this little story for years, and I'm sure 90% of the people in here relate to it. Because I know Dr. Cohen said, we can't change the achievement gap. But I also know Dr. McKenna has said many times that the same schools are failing for the last 50 years. And every time someone comes to the board and says, we've got a program, it'll take a while, or we're going to use the bell curve, to me that always writes off a portion of our kids. And I get frustrated. We always write off a portion. And those are the kids that need us the most. Everybody says kumbaya about the A through G. What about the EL students who aren't getting access to the core curriculum? That bothers me more. And so I've got a passion there. So you probably heard this, but I've carried it around for 20 years, and I read it sometimes, and sometimes I read it aloud to parents. It's called One at a Time. It's reprinted from Chicken Soup. Soup for the Soul by Canfield and Hansen. And I'm just going to read it real fast. A friend of ours was walking down a deserted beach at sunset. As he walked along, he began to see another man in the distance. He noticed that the man kept leaning down and picking up something and throwing it into the water. Time and time again, he kept hurling things out into the big ocean. As our friend approached even closer, he noticed that the man was picking up starfish that had washed up on the beach and throwing, picking up starfish, let's see, okay, I gotta read it, up on the beach, one at a time, and throwing them back into the water. Our friend was puzzled. He approached the man and said, "Good evening, friend. I was wondering what you were doing." The man replied, "I'm throwing starfish back into the ocean, you see. It's low tide, and all of these starfish have been washed up on the shore. If I don't throw them back into the sea, they'll die up here from lack of oxygen." "Oh, I understand," the friend replied, "but there must be thousands of starfish on the beach. You possibly can't get all of them. And don't you realize that this probably happens on 100 beaches all up and down this coast? Can't you see you can't possibly make a difference?" The local native smiled. He bent down, picked up yet another starfish, and threw it back into the sea and said, "I made a difference with that one." And that's what it's about, one kid at a time. That's why I react to when you say 5 years. I react because I've been waiting 5 years, 50 years. we can do what we want to do, and children will respond. That's my conviction. I believe. Thank you.
Also picture. This is my first class of sixth graders as a California science, and they're now high school seniors, which is very exciting. And I think for me, I consider this work very personal, and my opportunity to teach these kids was such an amazing privilege. I taught just a couple miles from where I grew up, and so to be, a first-generation American, a Latina teaching, Latino students was a very powerful experience for me. It brought me joy and purpose in a way that I had never experienced before, and I saw myself as a leader for the first time in my classroom, and felt the responsibility of having students who looked up to me, not just as their teacher, but as somebody who looked like them and who could be a role model for them. And that's what, my love for these kids is what has driven me since then. When I was at the U.S. Department of Education, I had this picture as my screensaver because we often joked that from the Department of Education headquarters, you couldn't even see a school. And so, which is true, you couldn't. But to have this as a constant reminder of why I do this work. It's not about numbers or statistics or policies, although I love numbers, statistics, and policies. It's about people, it's about lives. And then as a teacher, growing up, I didn't have teachers that I connected well with. I had a lot of teachers who told me someone like me didn't belong in college, or that I should set my sights lower. And so I felt like as being a teacher gave me the opportunity to sort of right those wrongs and be what I needed for myself when I was growing up. So I try to remember. Much love.
2 minutes and 14.
I like to
Go ahead, sir. You always defer. I'll defer to you. All right, I'll time myself. So, I own Manuel and Guillermina's daughter who started at Stevenson, and my artifact is the 40th anniversary t-shirt from the walkouts. I was born 20 days after the walkouts, and I've embraced my opportunity of so many people fought for me. So many people created and fought and died, and that is the movement that I have chosen to carry forward. I was president of the school board, third Latina 155 years, on the 40th anniversary, and we celebrated the kids who walked out, and that was awesome. And so I thought about the Kids First is all about teachers like Sal Castro standing up to join the fight and really challenging LA Unified in a way that was from the inside, was about heart and soul, and it was about what was not right in an institution. I also put on our We Are One button because I'm so proud of this district for saying the right things and being that support for our kids who are vulnerable today, but also it is about owning that our achievement is growing. We have changed our ways. We are not the same district of 2001 when I got here. I ran against 4 Latinos educated from college for an open seat, and so there were 6 board members for 6 months. And I remember selling pan dulce in 7th grade to go to a leadership conference. I remember opportunities like being at Cal when I found out that we were 0.07% Chicano, and I had a 0.045 GPA my first semester for a series of issues, but I knew how to read, and I didn't realize how many people did not. And so I was so blessed that my life fell apart after graduation and after mastery, and I was able to recover, and I came back with a 3.7 a year later. But Cal absolutely changed my life and made me I wanted to create opportunities for others like me. Cal needed to learn about me, right? So my college experiences, I learned women were considered second-hand citizens. I didn't understand that. Working class people were thought negatively about. I didn't understand that. I knew their strength and resilience. Spanish speakers were, considered less than, and I didn't understand that. And certainly Latinos and Mexican Americans from East LA, people had all kinds of ideas that I didn't understand that. So I feel like the investment in me from the state of California and others who created opportunity was paid back in helping them learn more about our strength and our success. I was a counselor at Edison, and I brought Edgar and Lizette as part of my artifact. Edgar is my 6th grade student.
How about my artifact, Monica?
Edgar is my 6th grade student.
Yeah, perjury, Monica.
Program at Edison Middle School. And Lizette is an amazing organizer from the East Side. And my leadership story is about building the next generation of people who demand and joining with people who want to see authentic conversations about the world that we want to create. So when I got on the board, the choice was 6 board members and a superintendent saying that we didn't have a dropout problem, or supporting 1381, which Mr. Villaraigosa was challenging that he was going to partner and things had to change. And so in my view, change or status quo are always at the heart of, do we make things different? Do we own the power that we get as elected officers and include more people in our success? And I am absolutely one to celebrate what this district has been able to do and the little pieces of making space for others that I think Board District 2 has done. But we have to be critical friends, because while things are better every day, my last artifact was, and I'm on 4 minutes on this, my last artifact was my niece Maya, who's 6 years old in District 2. And when she had to start school, my sister had a list of schools that she could pick from that I would send my niece to. And that was different in 2016. And graduation is up because people have insisted that things be different. Thank you. 4 minutes, 52.
Stand up because I am the artifact. Not the same as a relic. I don't have to dig me up. But they did have to pull me in. I thought it was out. Like Carl, to be able to get it up. I come from a different journey. I was born into segregated conditions. Oppression was legal. Suppression was legal. Segregation was legal. But I'm also blessed because I experienced that life. And I realized because my mother was a school teacher who taught me to read before I knew that I couldn't read. I don't remember not being able to read. I don't remember learning how to read. My mother taught it to me before I knew what reading was. I realized that education was the key, the most important pathway to freedom. I came to California on the securities route. I was an athlete and a scholar. I was a 4th sport athlete in high school and 3 sport athlete in college. I didn't play football in college. I wasn't suicidal. Pretty good in high school. I won championships, and I learned about teamwork. Every sport I played, I was the smallest man on the court. Smallest in track, smallest in football, smallest in basketball, smallest in baseball. But I wanted to be a professional baseball player. I played against Luke Crockett, played against people that became, Hall of Famers. I was pretty good. Actually, the older I get, the greater I used to be. But education was always my passion. I hear recently, about 10 years ago, Reform Education was a civil rights committee. And people around the country now talk about education as civil rights. We started it right here. And the slogan, even President Obama used. I think education is the greatest civil right yet unattained. And I was a protester. I was active. Been arrested a few times, sit in, things like that, protesting oppression. That was overt and not so overt. But my leadership style and my artifact has to do with school. The most important time of my life that my colleague did was what I spent in school. I spent time in middle school, but I was a principal of one school. I was the only time I was a principal. I was an assistant principal in middle school. I worked in 4 different high schools, all in the unified. Being a principal, I changed lives. I spent 10 years there. Most people didn't spend 10 years in school back in those days. The principals would get promoted and moved around. Most of the principals in those days were men. They were athletes, so they were connected to the CIF and all those things. And that's where it was. Very few women were principals in high school. They thought women could be principals in high school. Until Josephine and men showed up. A couple other people showed up. And said, no, that's not true. Josephine and men probably over time for the job. So my leadership had to do with the product that came out of the school. Out of that school have become several principals. Here another unified. Principal of King Drew was a Washington graduate. The former principal of Dorsey was just left there. The current principal of Washington High was a Washington High graduate. One of the proudest moments in my life was attending a graduation at the Drew Medical School. Here in the Drew Medical School is one of the 3 predominant African American public schools in the country. Harry, there's Fisk, Harry Howard, and Aggie. A young lady named Anita Francis, whose father was Robert Francis, who was a very poor man. He was living on disability, activist. He didn't know where to send his child to school. So when I showed up at Washington, he said, George, I'm going to put it in your hands. He said, I don't trust anybody else to you. So a lot of people didn't want to go to Washington. She graduated, went on to school, and proudest, sort of thinking about it. I watched her graduate as a doctor, MD, from a Drew Medical School. She's now OB/GYN in Atlanta. And the people at the hospital told me, they looked her up and said, that's where she is. And she did graduate. So to watch that girl walk across there with a medical degree was satisfaction for me. Not just for me, but all the people that touched her. And I realized through my athletic career that teamwork is very important. And when I played basketball, being the smallest one I had to position the ball. I was a point guard. And I was a great shooter, but I had to sacrifice my shooting because everybody else wanted to shoot. So we won by me distributing the ball, not trying to be the scorer. And I think that my colleagues here are part of this process. And I know that I have to work as a team. Unfortunately, many times when I went out there to try to change things, the team wouldn't follow me. So I had to do it myself. Nobody gave me a script for what to do at Washington High. Nobody told me what to do. They said go there because the last principal was in trouble. They took him out. So just go there and survive. But I said no. I was blessed and oppressed at the same time in Louisiana. I knew that being in a predominantly, exclusively black environment and brown was not a disadvantage. That's not the oppression. The oppression is the way you treat the children. When I went to Washington High, it had 0 white children in it. Up to 1965, Washington was 97% white. 1965, the Watts riots broke out. I was teaching at Jordan High. Washington was not near Watts. The white community moved out. The black community bought the property. By 1975 years, there was not 1 white child in Washington. I looked at the unit. And they went to the valley. And then the diaspora took over. And then we were busing. And kids were running away to the valley. By the time I got to Washington, early on, we had 3,000 students. The class norm was higher than that. By the time I got there, we had about 1,300. By the time I left, we had 2,800. We had built it back up. I was not the greatest friend of people in the district because kids were getting off the bus and coming back to the school. one of the most interesting statistics that I wasn't even aware of the 2,800 students that were at Washington by the time I left, I spent 10 years, I left in '88. Of those 2,800 students, 2,500 of them were African American. No school, carefully hear this, no school west of the Mississippi River had 2,500 black students all at the same time. When I say no school, I'm not just talking about high school. I'm talking about university. UCLA, Notre Dame, Michigan State, Oregon. No place in this country that a school had 2,500 black students west of the Mississippi River that I know of, including some of the Georgia black colleges, which are even smaller than 2,500, like Prairie View. This is Mississippi. Therefore, that school, as an artifact, if you will, had a great impact on the economic viability of the community, the educational viability, the employability, the domestic tranquility, the safety of the community, etc., etc., etc. And now, Washington still struggles because things change, and we've separated ourselves. Holding the public schools together as a fundamental unit has to be important. Because no matter what else we do as an alternative to public schools, the great majority of our children will be in public schools. And my mission is to make sure all of our public schools work. It should not be something called a persistent and underachieving public school. It's like a contradiction of concept. It's cognitive dissonance for me. It's almost something that makes me want to fight. And I've been fighting all my life. Some I win, some I lose, but I don't stop getting up. Because fighting is what you have to do, even when you're outnumbered, even when they're bigger than you. You don't fall. You put your uniform on and take a whip. Give some lumps back. You get up the next day and go out there again until you get better. Or you wear them down. They get tired of beating them. And some of that strategy works and some of it doesn't. So I'm still here. I'm older than Carl. Maybe I am a rebel. Maybe I haven't done it.
And you're still alive.
I can be seen and not viewed. I was sorry when Tina said, because she was the oldest, we used to tease her, who was the oldest farmer in the district. Yeah, because he said, you catching up. I said, yeah, you get ready to leave, you need to be here, aren't you? So he left, I think I am. So my journey has been satisfactory to me. I've enjoyed my life. It had lots of explosions of different things that happened in my world, and I made some enemies. But I've also made some friends who are calling my students, who thank us, the team of people that work at the school. It wasn't one person show. Celebrity, I remember that, you don't want that, because celebrity is double-edged sword. It's in a way people's common sense. I never felt above anything. I never enjoyed titles. I'm a school board member by accident. If Marguerite Lamont had died, still wanted to run, she'd still be here. I'd be supporting her. I wasn't trying to be a school board member. But now that I am, I got to remember it is a great responsibility, as my colleagues have found out. The older ones have been here a while and the new. And so, I am just dedicated to this work, and I appreciate the fact that I've been able to survive all the things I had to survive. One final thing. I found as much oppression out here in California as I did in New York. Because at least New Orleans had signs telling you where you should go. But it was subtle here in California, because they would separate you different kinds of ways. I've told the story, and I'll close with it. When I was at I was in graduate school at LAUSD in Chicago, and I got to know the basketball players because they won the NCAA championship the year. First and only time they ever won. And I was scrimmage with them. I couldn't play because I was in graduate school. We were sitting around talking about, George, what do you want to be? And my buddy Bob Gallagher said, I'm going to be a dentist, George. That's what he told me. I said, I don't know, man. I don't want to be a school teacher because my mama was a school teacher. There must be something else I can do. And I said, I think I want to be an astronaut. He said, George, there's no such thing as a black astronaut. I said, I know, Bob. But look at me. They don't know what I am. I said, I'm going to join up. They don't know what I am. They don't. As long as I don't use no Louisiana accent, said, no, you don't know what I am. I'm not joined. I'm just talking now, right? And I said, I'm a joint. I won't tell them what I am. And if I get on the first shuttle to the moon, and when we get ready to land on the moon, I'll push the guy out of the way and jump down on the moon, and I'm going to yell out loud, I'm the first man on the moon, and I'm black. That's how they told me. I said, yeah, George. And they're going to leave your black man. I didn't say the word but. He said something else. Which I understood. And interestingly enough, when I came to California, I did become an engineer for North American Aviation. Where LACO is now, there used to be NASA, right? It was open 24/7, 365. And when I worked there, I was the only black person in there. They didn't even know I was then, right? I worked there during 2 summers. I had a badge, and I didn't know the hidden figures. I didn't know there were women on the east side. I didn't know where they were, all the mathematicians. So I was an engineer. I didn't become an astronaut. But I remembered that there was this comfortable sense of oppression. They were not looking for people like me. And I think we've overlooked a lot of possible opportunities for people of color. But not looking for them. They're not here, but that's okay. Let's just keep going on. When I was a superintendent in Inglewood, Mike Garrett, who was the head of the athletic department at USC, he said, I said, Mike, you know, there are very few black students at USC. He said, George, you won't believe this. This was around 1990 or something. And he was running the forum, just running the boxing program at the forum, which was across the street from the Inglewood School District. And he said, of all of the black males that are on USC's campus that particular year, all but one of them was an athlete on scholarship. There was only one black male, freshman, walking around there who wasn't there on athletic scholarship. Now, does that mean USC was at fault? Well, they had a great backfield, right? They had people that they integrated sports because of the black athletes, but where was the black academician? And so I'm not condemning USC because I don't know who else was maybe different elsewhere. So my struggle has always been to get the underserved community an opportunity to get public education. Public education. I also had Catholic education for a while. It wasn't much better, but it was more disciplined. You didn't talk back to the priest. They slapped us out of the head. They literally slapped us out of the head. And I learned about that. So thank you very much for letting me share with you the visual part of it.
It's amazing how much passion and commitment to doing the right thing in terms of this board. What is sometimes needed, again, is it all, how can you better organize yourselves to get to those kinds of accomplishments that all of you have talked about, and that's the work of a retreat, a governance workshop. You know, our thoughts and prayers are very much with the folks in Houston as we come here today. And one of the most amazing things about what we're going to talk about, and this is their extraordinary legacy going back to 1990, where they wanted to better organize themselves as a school board, independent of who was in the role of superintendent. What could they, as a school board, do to better organize themselves to deliver on the vision? And so this really is their work. Don McAdams, who was very much behind this and a member of the Houston Independent School District at the time, he shepherded this right from his seat on the board dates. And so, as you can see there, it starts with core beliefs, theories, of action for change? What are those policies that are unique to this board and where you are today? What kind of oversight do you bring to that? What are those building blocks of change and reform? A look at roles, responsibilities, and relationships. And then this whole issue of how do you broaden civic capacity? How do you get the community really engaged? One of the interesting things about Long Beach in the 90s, we had this conversation with the community, and the community said, among other things, we want high standards, dress, behavior, and achievement. But they also said, and I think I've seen this in your work, they also said, we want the public school system to be the first choice of parents, not the default system for those who don't have opportunities. So what this gives you, and the important message, you see a lot of arrows, some arrows go above, below the line. And the argument here is that the superintendent is the person who gets to go back and forth between governance and management, and that line, the board, really should stay above the line in terms of governance. Why are you laughing? So that's the idea, and that's what this is all about. Now, what's amazing, there are all kinds of supports that go along with each of these, and you don't accomplish any of these in a single morning workshop. But this is the overall design of how the board organizes itself to get better. When I was, a year ago, I was up in Butte County and meeting with folks up there. And the county superintendent said, I can't get any of my school boards to talk about instruction. That they will spend an hour debating the merits of procuring Dodge trucks versus Chevy trucks, and that's how they spend their time. This issue of student achievement is a heavy, heavy lift, but they don't spend their time on that when they get together to meet. So purchasing trucks is a really important thing that they spend their time on. Sometimes you run into boards who don't have a clear notion of how they're spending their time. So one of the things that you actually can do that was, again, developed by the folks in Houston, what's called a time tracking device, where you actually take 4 board meetings over a month or 2, and you actually chart and look at what is the data? What does the data tell us as a collective about how we're spending our time? So there's a whole bunch of things that you can do in an organized way to become more effective as a collective. And so right now I would just pause and ask, as you look at this, do you have questions? Is there something that jumps out at you? Done by a real urban school board over 2 decades. Go ahead.
I guess in Houston, there are some of the districts. What is the relationship usually between the board's declaration of decisions and principles and the
the administration strategic plan? Or how did those two?
Yeah, so down there, they worked to put those together, but the overall statement came from the board. Overall core beliefs, vision, but, and you know, one of the nice things about where we are in California today, a lot of folks are coming together around the LCAP and trying to be inclusive to put all of that in an LCAP. Now, I didn't have anything to do with the development of the LCAP template. One of the things that my little shop is actually working on is getting some foundation money to come up with a new bottom-up sort of LCAP.
If I can respond to your question directly, I think one of the most important things that you as a board and superintendent can work on, and we would take 2 times a year or 3 times a year, that we would do a retreat, whether the public was always present, but it was to talk about the core priorities and things that we want to see done. Obviously, you will have your overarching goals and your focus on student achievement, and the superintendent would provide us with progress, what's going on. But we could identify, we would say to Carl, these are the 3 priorities for the next 3 months. I mean, our uniform policy came up as an idea, a harebrained idea, in one of our board retreats. And you could see staff just going, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with this? How are we going to convince them that we're not going to do it because it's the craziest idea? Instead, we had a superintendent that said to staff, the board really likes this idea. It talks about our high standards. Let's get all the information to see if we can do it or can't do it. They had 3 months to come up with focus, problems, legal ramifications, and then we as a team decided whether we were going to go forward or not. I think boards need time to be together. I've heard commonality in all of your stories. I've heard passion. How do you take those individual beliefs to become board beliefs, bring on your team, and then have an LA Unified common message to your community? And I think that that governance sort of takes it from the core beliefs that we started with, and then you come out with your civic commitments and bringing people together in the relationships. And I think, does that help answer the question in a sense? But I think that zero in and see what feels comfortable or what information you would need from that.
One of the challenges that I faced and found to be an obstacle for me is not being able to talk to my colleagues because of something called Brown Act.
I agree.
And I've never seen Brown come in the room yet. His name is always there about who I can be with, where we can't talk, that kind of thing. So we don't get to bounce stuff off. That's why I'm glad we have this release. We're all in the room together. We're not making policy. We just talk. Yes. And
that builds trust and respect and civility.
I believe it does. And I think it allows us, even though there's some of the public here, the media is here, we can express ourselves in a different way without the 3 minutes. But one of the things, I always struggle with the concept of the word change and reform. To me, that does not equate to improvement. Things can change, and people call it reform. It's not always improvement. I mean, the federal government has changed. The leadership has changed. That's really reform. I don't think it's an improvement. Other people do. There's telebricks. Just a simple example of the difference. And so I'm looking, I always measure by the collateral unintended consequences. The collateral damage and unintended consequences. who got hurt by any decision we made and when we implement? Who gets hurt? So the neediest have to be considered. So I believe that the more attention you pay to the neediest, the more effective you are with paying attention to the rest of us who thought we had no need at all. And when we damage any part of our community, we're not really improving the community in general. I'm not talking about this isolated incident. I'm talking about some sort of systemic damage that we might do. Not intended necessarily. Harm we do if we leave some people out by pronouncing a victory over here was a selected group of people. And that's a challenge we have to face as a team. And so I hope that we can
What if we have high standards for every child in school?
Yeah, and so this notion of underperforming schools, the fact that that still exists. I use this example, airplanes that don't fly, but here's your ticket, right? Why are you buying a ticket on a plane that might not safe? So why is this school there? Why do you say, come ye to me? Well, we got a big sign above it that says, you're on the list of underperforming schools. Thank you for not wanting to be here. But there are people that are working hard. And that's what we have to do.
I think Dr. McHenry makes a really important point. One, in general, people don't necessarily do change with loss. And so some of it is training. But also, no one wants to be with programs. No one wants to be told they have to change. Because in many ways, it discredits the hard work that they do in the classrooms. I think one of the things I've always liked about Houston's city beliefs and visions is that it's very intentional about what they're trying to do, what's been done, who's to blame, who's not to blame. They usually take this active forward. This is a structural, systemic issue. And so, I think it's very important to say, one, what are we trying to do? And maybe it's not just change people. What is that? And who, but it also acknowledges the work that's been done. And I think that, yes, when I see it, we still feel an urgency to improve a lot, but also acknowledge and see how many questions have been stated, how many things have changed since the early 2000s. So what I think of us doing this process is be really intentional about what is it we want to do, and how does that support the people in classrooms that are working hard. So you say we're coming to change and reform, it really does discredit the fact that today, as we speak, tens of thousands of people working as hard as they possibly can for students, and we don't want to basically say they're doing wrong. We want to acknowledge that there are systemic factors, there are structural racism, poverty, in schools that make their jobs harder, but as the Board of Education, we should try to make their jobs easier. Here's what we need to do that. And I think it really from this framing of this, we don't want to. This can't be about someone was wrong and now we're wrong. It has to be about we're all collectively working together to a system that is not to put their interests first, and how do we collectively perform. We have to be intentional about the fact that we believe, maybe not before, how do we collectively improve and we be intentional about what that looks like, so that we can avoid having sensitivities when we say their product. If we can all know their products are going to perform in schools, then potentially ultimately improving those schools in a way that doesn't blame you. And I think that's key.
I look at the chart and I think about, in terms of oversight, it has been a focus on fiscal, because a lot of the conversation has been what Sacramento decided and then how we responded, right? And then I think about the building program that was a board of 1999 that said, let's build where it's needed, not split it in 7 and distribute, right? And so part of LA Unified's bold action of saying, we need 160 schools. We got to 131, but that was big. That was not about today. That was about the vision of being a successful district. So I think part of our challenge is that even in 99, what Mr. Melvoin said, absolutely, LA Unified has been the best of the best in many ways, but we've allowed the worst of the worst to exist, right? So the movement of our time has been about, and part of the standards movement, part of, reading for everyone, what did it do? The budgets haven't been about all, but the movement has been about success for all. And it has forced LA Unified to look at the policies inside of LA Unified, where we fund some systems to maintain success to the detriment of others. And I think that it's the internal conversations that have been the hardest, I think. Because when we are all unified against state action or in response to state action, over time different boards have been able to coalesce around that vision, painful as it was. The challenge that we have had is when it is about this organization creating the policy development and series of action to serve more kids better, or, I know in my district I have schools that have done like 5 reorganizations. Sometimes because of the building program that they're not going to be at 5,000 anymore. But other times because leadership has said we need to be different and we supported that. So the challenge for this group of folks, I think, often is not just preferences, but meeting the practicality or operationalization of those theories. And are you preserving, or are you going to support innovation or something?
Well, it's also Monica caring what's going on in George's school and maybe sacrificing a little here to care about all of the schools. And I think one of the issues that is really important to talk about is what commonalities, because each one of your districts, you have your own little, I want to say, fiefdoms in your districts that you're protective of. But your district can only be successful if the rest of the districts are successful, if you talk about LA Unified. So on that, with that premise, what can we come up with as board members where we're respectful of each one's own individual areas, but supportive and knowing that our overall success is only dependent upon everyone else's success. And I think that's the important thing in today's conversation.
Can we just underline, that's a not yet for LA Unified.
I didn't say that.
I'm just saying, this district has had, we have a segregation of success.
Right.
So it's the tension.
Right, and I'm saying that if we can help you as a board lower that tension so that you can become unified in the sense of having those common, you can say beliefs, it's almost common actions that would affect all the schools in a way that they all rise up. And I think that that's something each one of you has to think about in the sense of working with your colleagues.
I brought this as an example of one of the things. We're not going to do this today, but this is the type of thing where you actually take a look at how you're spending your time. And then the other thing is the staff involved. And one of the things that sometimes, I'm not saying this because this could happen all over, but those who love the status quo sometimes like to see the superintendent and the superintendent's staff walk down with the board. Because if you really like the status quo, sometimes the way the status quo will be maintained for so long is if the superintendent and the superintendent's staff spends all of their time preparing for board meetings, sitting at board meetings, and then doing all of the debrief and follow-up that's necessary, and then the cycle starts all over. Now this sometimes you don't bring this up in polite company, but and every district is local, and you are the best judge of your community and the politics of your community. Now, we did have circumstances in Long Beach, and not everybody will be there, where we decided, you know what, we're going to get together 4 times a year for 2.5 days, and we're really going to spend time, and then the superintendent and the superintendent's staff are going to be hell-bent on making sure that these changes are taking place in the schools of the district, which is kind of a different, subtle shift away from sometimes the way school boards, especially sometimes in large urban districts, operate. It's all about, you know, the board and interaction with the board. Well, you also want your superintendent and your staff to be out there ensuring that all of these kids, all means all, are systematically rescued if they are in fact underserved. And
My record board meeting was 17 minutes. Our board meeting was over in 17 minutes, correct? Dr. Ho?
you know,
Because
yeah.
we did a lot of work, and I'm not saying that, but I'm
Yeah.
saying that the
And-
focus was not on the board meeting and all these conversations going back and forth, because we knew that staff was doing what they needed to be doing, and we went through the process. But it was those workshops, and it was the focus that was...
Yeah, not every community, again, you know the politics of this community, not every community, are you going to have a board that 4 times a year can stop, put away everything else, and focus for 2.5 days on the overall direction of the system. And then the regular board meetings become more trustee-like meetings. I'm not saying that's a solution for LA. I'm saying you have to make the measure of what your community is all about. Go ahead.
I think what you were alluding to earlier, I've heard it referred to as malicious compliance too, and which is where, you know, records from the board are maybe being followed to the letter of what was asked about this year. And I think, you know, there are 2 reasons. One, maybe people will like the status quo. 2, I think maybe there's too many demands on their time to do it all. This is something we've already started to discuss. But, you know, if the superintendent's office is getting 100 requests a week in this year, you just can't do it all. I think one of the bigger ones is that people may not all the time be bought in because they don't understand the rules. And I think the organization is often trying to apply technical fixes to more than active problems. And the reason this excites me so much is because I think that, you know, you want to, you know, like think back to my classroom. You want kids to get really excited about reading. You don't teach them like necessarily better. Give them a topic they really love and how they go out and read it. And if you have a vision that people can coalesce on and core values that really stand for something, then when you ask them to do it and it's in service of the greater improvement, I think people will kind of much more confident. But I think that that's a big, and I heard this too, I think that and I'm good to it as well, but depending on the administration's time without kind of vision, ambition, or beliefs in some processes, I think we can get really distracted these days.
I just want to say, I think it's also the systemness that is already embedded that happens. So it is a one-off, but it's kind of the cycle of the way things go. It kind of keeps the machine running that we're kind of plugged into, and it's just the way it happens month after month. And so, you know, the concept of the board
Here's the phone record, you go to prison. Phone record to Holmquist.
How many things are on the agenda?
Holmquist, you're going away.
How many things we can offer to the staff, all of
Don't
those
tell me to
things
shut up when you break the law.
fold into it. We do a
That's
lot
right,
of prep
you too.
on the front end. We do prep, there's a lot that goes around actually this machine, I think, kind of running. In addition to the
Will
other things.
conform
that
to the law,
on, one-off as well.
Produce them.
So,
Shut up.
to your point,
Shut up.
all of that takes time away from the execution of a whatever. So if we're going to execute initiatives, time's taken away from doing that because you gotta flow. You gotta either prepare something, follow up on something to make it happen, and then sometimes the other. So I just think looking at what the system is, and that's why I thought this chart was fascinating to really track and know what's really happening. How much time do we spend on these various things to give data and information about where we might be able to consider streamlining some pieces, sometimes maybe not doing some pieces depending on what it is. That goes back to prioritizing what's important we want to see happen. Some other things might be great, but maybe not. Maybe we don't need to do them all to get to the priorities of what needs to happen.
And it was I was going to say, it was fascinating to watch Houston when they actually did this in real time. They had incredibly talented people on board, much like this situation. Don McAdams, Rob Page, really, really talented people, but they themselves were not that aware of how they were spending their time, and it was a surprise to them in terms of what they found. So these are some of the kinds of things that you can actually do to get better organized. Karen?
Talking about time and labor intensity,
Yeah.
the superintendent and her staff. Nicole Elam has briefings for us. We go to board book briefings, always send our staff. Every board member has staff. So the questions really should be asked at the briefing, not wait for the board meeting and then start asking these questions. Because what you get is a 5-page answer. And I don't want a 5-page answer. I want yes or no and maybe a line. But that's the system. 5-page answers, detail. Ask these questions at the briefing. Don't bring up these questions at the board meeting because then everyone has to listen and everyone has to get a copy of the request. And everybody answers very nicely. They really do. But the board briefings really count. I don't know if people take the board meeting as seriously as they should.
Well, go ahead.
I was just saying that just as a executive director, right, so much time we spend on planning time, and we're still being passionate as a board member. But the thing that struck me here is also the management versus governance that I find, in my humble opinion, that sometimes management is trying to adapt itself to 7 different personalities, 7 different priorities, because they don't really see that we have a full common commitments, core beliefs, and values. So if they were just adapting to that, because this is what we agreed to, it would be much easier for them. And certainly it would be very easy for us to then hold that line. The other thing that also gets me in trouble around management is that as an elected member, I have constituents. As constituents have issues that are very management-esque, right? It's about who the principal is, about the teacher, it's about, and so, you know, and because I'm a practitioner as well, my thing is like, I'll roll up my sleeve and let's fix this. But I've been learning more and more to just go back to the local district and go back to the superintendent, right? It still is a hard thing to do and stay focused.
Do you have a development plan in practice? Where Long Beach, do they have separate committees, board members check?
You know, again, you run into all kinds of different arrangements. Long Beach had 3 committees, but the committees met on board meeting day. They did not meet at a time separate and apart. And so basically, what was demonstrated by those committees, one was HR, the other was business and finance, and the other was instruction. So there were 3 committees. Said they had a lot of confidence in their colleagues who were serving on those committees. And so there wasn't a lot of debate around what those committees were doing. The other thing, which I'm sure you do, we would have these run-throughs of the board meeting, and, based on our knowledge of the board members, we would say, we're going to need a paragraph on that. We're going to need this, that, and the other thing in terms of explaining this and whatever, the Friday notes, or everybody has something similar. But the idea was, again, to have the superintendent and his or her staff spending more time on ensuring that change toward improvement was actually taking place in the schools than spending their time on the parent meeting of the school board, for lack of a better.
Two questions based on that. One, where in this kind of process would like us coming up with committees or board times or fall?
Yep.
And then, in Houston and others, is this a process of quarterly something that there should be unanimity for? Or, it seems like actually there is a lot of commonality among these quarterly submissions and commitments. But,
Yeah, so under generally, reform policies would be where that kind of thing would but it's quite a scheme that, also, includes transition planning, those kinds of things get in the mix. The thing that was sometimes remarkable, we'd come out for the open session board meeting, and I'd look out, and there would be a superintendent and a board president from some other district sitting at our board meeting. And it was kind of, can they really get the business of the third largest school district in California done in an hour or less? If it was, coming and actually seeing that it could be done. But again, you have this other situation where people gave up a full 2.5 days every 90 days to really let the fur fly, talk about the direction of the organization, and do a mini evaluation of the superintendent in the 2.5 days. It worked there, but I never suggest to another community that that's an answer for that community, because one of the things that I found in Long Beach, that the best judges of the politics of Long Beach were in fact the 5 elected school board members. They knew what the community was all about and what it would accept in terms of the public business. So, any other questions about this? Do we need a break before we dig in on core beliefs? Okay. Take a break.
Okay, we have a timer here. We do.